Let's talk some Michigan Wolverine recruiting. We're going to focus a little bit on the transfer portal, and this year's spring transfer portal window is sponsored by Teamworks Intelligence. Got EJ Holland here from the Wolverine. What is Michigan's biggest need now that the portal's open?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple of glaring needs. You have to start along the offensive line. That's been Michigan's MO, smash, being able to have one of the best offensive lines in the country. When Sharon Moore was the position coach, obviously transitioning over to head coach now, but when he was the offensive line coach at Michigan, the Wolverines won back-to-back Joe Moore Awards, best offensive line in the country. Last year, they took a step back. There were some struggles up front, particularly at tackle. Obviously, they went out and landed two premier tackles on the recruiting trail in Andrew Babalola and Ty Haywood. Haywood not on campus yet. Babalola already making some noise, but they want, offensive line. You don't want necessarily a true freshman starter. You want a guy with some experience, especially now that the portal is the biggest thing in college football. So they're going to be aggressive in trying to add an offensive tackle to come in and compete and start right away. We already reported this morning, and the portal is going to move quickly. I mean, you have 10, 11 days here to make something happen. So Joe Cotton out of South Dakota is definitely a target that's popped in early on. Obviously, we'll be tracking names throughout the day and throughout coming days, but he's definitely one that they're already in on early and have already had discussions. There's familiarity with his agency. Michigan has a good working relationship with them. So I think that overall offensive tackle is probably the biggest need. When it comes to other positions they're going to target, wide receiver. You look at last year, Michigan obviously had some quarterback issues, but the wide receiver room wasn't exactly helpful either. There's a need for talent. Last portal window during the winter, they added a couple of guys, Donovan McCulley from Indiana, Anthony Simpson from UMass, but not exactly game-breaking type of wide receivers. So I think they could look to potentially spend big on wide receiver. They almost landed Skylar Bell from UConn during the winter period. He elected to stay at UConn after some credit issues at Michigan. It'll be interesting to see if he jumps back in the portal. I could see them potentially making a run at Micah Hudson, who entered this morning, former five-star recruit. Michigan's wide receiver coach Ron Bellamy is a close friend of his mentor, Margin Hooks. They actually played together in the NFL, so a connection there. And then some other needs, punter is definitely a need. They lost their starting punter from last year, and obviously quarterback. Obviously the big talk is all about Bryce Underwood, and that's great. He's been fantastic, but Michigan needs depth in the quarterback room. This spring practice period, they've only had two healthy quarterbacks, one being Underwood, the other being Jaden Davis. They added a transfer during the winter portal period in Mikey Keene, but he's been injured. We don't know an exact timeline of when he'll be back and fully ready. So Michigan could explore adding another depth piece at the quarterback position, and that'll be something interesting to monitor. Who's available? Will they spend very much there? What type of quarterback can you get during this window? They're definitely not going to go after a Nico type of guy, but they do want to add some depth there to help Bryce Underwood along and just make sure that, if something were to happen there, they have another serviceable guy.
Yeah, all this talk, though, about Bryce Underwood, about a potential quarterback transfer. What about Jaden Davis, who's currently sitting there on the roster? Is there any fear that maybe he could hit the portal?
I mean, potentially he has been competing. I think he showed a willingness to be competitive with Bryce Underwood this spring to try to make his own mark. At the same time, I think Jaden Davis was a little more highly touted as a recruit than he probably should have been. I think maybe you could, if they do add another portal quarterback, especially if they add maybe a younger portal quarterback,
Yeah.
maybe you could see Jaden Davis hit the transfer portal. I think he knows the long-term solution at the quarterback position is Bryce Underwood. I think they, again, would probably like to keep him because the quarterback room has no depth right now, and he's been the only guy going through spring practices aside from Underwood. But that's certainly a possibility. I mean, I wouldn't rule out Jaden Davis hitting the portal. I still think he has a lot of things to work on. He has some physical limitations, being a shorter quarterback who's not exactly mobile. He still has a hitch in his throwing motion and kind of a longer wind up, which obviously isn't ideal in general, but definitely not ideal for a shorter quarterback who's not super mobile. At the same time, he's a high IQ kid. He knows how to manage an offense. He played at Providence Day, has gotten really good quarterback training from guys like Will Grier and Cam Newton. So he can be a safe, serviceable option, which Michigan would like to have in the quarterback room. But in today's era, especially with how touted he was as a recruit, I think guys want an opportunity to play right away. And I'm not sure there's a path for Jaden Davis to really be the guy at Michigan as long as Bryce Underwood's on the roster.
All right, let's talk a little high school recruiting now, and we got quarterback drama. Brady Smeagol is on campus this weekend, but could Michigan be on the verge of another quarterback commitment that's not named Smeagol?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting situation going into the weekend. So our national analyst Steve Wilfong put in an on-3 prediction for Nathan Bernhardt, who's a 3-star quarterback out of Ohio, an Ohio State legacy. And the reason I didn't join Steve is not because I don't think Michigan leads there. They absolutely have the inside track for Nathan Bernhardt, and he could be on the verge of giving the Wolverines a commitment. But a couple of different factors here. One, like I said, Bernhardt is an Ohio State legacy, right? So if Ohio State jumps in the picture, that could go the other way very quickly. The other thing is I think Michigan wants to be a little patient with Bernhardt. Maybe in just coming days, not necessarily long term. They could very well end up with a commitment this month, but they do have Brady Smeagol coming in for an unofficial visit this weekend, and they want to see how that goes. And they're kind of polar opposite quarterbacks, right? Brady Smeagol is a guy who was ranked really early. He's dropped a little bit in the rankings, especially on 3, mostly because he's older for his grade. He's more of a high floor quarterback, not a lot of ceiling there, but he's accurate. He has a decent arm. He's the son of a coach. He can command an offense, kind of similar to what I was saying with Jaden Davis, that type of level of quarterback, just better frame, taller guy, 6'4". So, you're getting a safe depth piece that can be a starter later in his career. On the flip side of the coin, Nathan Bernhardt is a very, very intriguing prospect, not as polished of a passer, but big frame, 6'6", 225 pounds, really good arm, not the best throwing motion, but that's getting cleaned up with private quarterback trainer Brad Mandler this offseason. He's a guy that even at 6'6", 225, you think, man, that's probably a statue pocket passer. He's not. He rushed for more than 1,000 yards last season. He could easily be a Division I level tight end or defensive end too. He's a really great athlete. So when you look at Nathan Bernhardt, you look at what he can be, upside, developmental guy. When you look at Brady Smeagol, you think, high floor depth piece, safe take that can add to the quarterback room after Bryce Underwood. So you could make an argument for taking the high floor guy. You could also make an argument for taking the high ceiling guy. And I think Michigan just wants to weigh its options and see where things stand with Brady Smeagol. And the door has opened there for Michigan because Washington was trending for Smeagol. It looks like they're going a different route at quarterback. So, again, that door is open for Michigan to make a move with Smeagol this weekend, but they also know that Bernhardt is a heavy lane as long as Ohio State does not offer. So really interesting time here at the quarterback position.
Yeah, maybe by the end of the weekend, we'll see how this one plays out. But let's move on to a big-time running back target, Javian Osborne. He'll be in Ann Arbor this weekend. Last weekend, he was at Notre Dame. We know he has a top 2 of Michigan, Notre Dame. He has a decision date as well, and that's May 3rd. Right now, all signs point to Notre Dame having the lead heading into this big visit weekend at Michigan. EJ, what's this battle coming down to between Notre Dame and Michigan, and do you think that Michigan can come from behind and land Javian Osborne? This year's spring transfer portal window is sponsored by Teamworks Intelligence, and their mission is simple. More hits, fewer misses, and player evaluation. In the transfer portal era, data-driven recruiting isn't just an advantage, it's essential. And Teamworks Intelligence empowers your program to navigate the transfer portal with precision while simultaneously elevating your game planning and self-scouting capabilities. The same advanced analytics platform trusted by NFL teams to make multi-million-dollar personnel decisions is now available to elevate your college program's evaluation process. For athletic directors, general managers, and coaching stats, Teamwork Intelligence delivers game-changing efficiency by streamlining the evaluation process. Instead of spending countless hours reviewing film, traveling to scout prospects, your team can assess more players with greater accuracy in even less time. This means maximizing recruiting efforts within the new budget constraints, giving you the competitive edge needed to build championship caliber programs. Don't just survive the portal era, dominate it with Teamwork's Intelligence, the new standard in player evaluation.
Yeah, I mean, this one's coming down to NIL. I mean, I might get in trouble with some dads for saying that, but you know, when you look at recruitments like these, it's pretty clear what the issue is. And not only that, I talked to Maurice Osborne, Javion Osborne's dad, and he was really honest and candid with me when we did our interview. And he told me, look, it's really coming down to the business side of it. And when you look at Notre Dame, they've been very aggressive in talking upfront money and NIL and what they can offer right away. And I don't think Michigan has taken that approach early in the cycle. And, you know, as much as I love to take jabs as Notre Dame, that's not really a knock on Notre Dame. A lot of teams are doing that. Miami's doing that. Oregon, Georgia, several top-notch college programs are talking NIL numbers, exact NIL numbers right now, early in the cycle. Michigan is staying patient. They want to see how things kind of develop from a revenue sharing standpoint. They want to see how things develop just with the court rulings. They want to see how much they're going to spend in the portal. Their general manager, Sean McGee, coming from the NFL, has more of an NFL salary cap model strategy. He wants to balance a budget while building a roster intelligently. Does not want to talk exact numbers right now. And look, they didn't talk exact numbers with Jackson Cantwell, and they didn't talk exact numbers with Savion Hyder, you know, and it's not like Michigan's not talking NIL. That's not what I'm saying. They are. They're giving guys ranges. They're talking about their plan for the future. They're talking about revenue sharing. They do comparisons with positions and what pros make at that position. So, you know, they are talking NIL. They're just not giving you an exact dollar figure. So if Michigan doesn't do that this weekend, which I'm not sure they will, especially with Savion Hyder still on the board and the strategy they've employed, even with Osborne having a commitment date for next month, I think they'll lay out a plan. I think they will give him a range, but will that be enough to overcome Notre Dame, which is giving out exact type of figures? I'm not so sure. I still lean Notre Dame, but we'll see what comes out of that recruitment. But yeah, that's an interesting one. We talked about a precious recruit in Smeagol, and now we're talking about an interesting situation here in Osborne as well. So a couple of really intriguing storylines during the spring game from a recruiting perspective.
In a really important weekend ahead for Michigan fans. Go check out the Wolverine. You guys, we only scratched the surface on the transfer portal high school recruiting. EJ Holland, you guys do a great job over there. I think all Michigan fans should go read it.